Shut up, compressor. Hey everyone, Matt here with Duke's Models, and welcome to the Pony Bash. Alright, welcome to the 5th and final edition of the Fony Bash, because the F-51 is done. Ta-da! Now, I think for this wrap-up, I'm going to first kind of walk through what I've done since the last installment, and then I want to get back to my initial motives for building this kit, and kind of my final closing thoughts. So what have I done since the last time? Well, last time, as I mentioned, I lost the Tamiya decal sheet, and I needed to source U.S. Air Force stencils for the tail specifically. And I did that with some Caracal sheets for the P-51H of all things, and they came out okay. Where things went a bit screwy back here, as you can see, mainly on the colored trim tab on the rudder up here, and also over here on the USAF, is I put down a K-Colors semi-gloss matte sort of a thing, and it beaded. And typically in the past, when it's beaded, it has dried all nice and smooth. It didn't this time. It just dried beaded. At this point, I was already treating this thing more as an advanced mule than a full-on 1,000% effort build, and so it was kind of like, let's just keep pushing forward. But that is a good thing to note moving forward. The dangers of trusting acrylic clears in general is most of the time when they work great, but when they don't, they really fuck you. So, great lesson. Alright, after applying the decals and after sealing in the chipped areas in maybe a less than stellar way, it was time to move into the weathering. And so for the weathering on this guy, it was basically oils and Mr. Weathering Color. Mr. Weathering Color actually took an interesting route with the wings up here, specifically sort of like the whole surface area, and also down the fuselage sides, of basically, instead of brushing it on and then racing the clock to thin it, stab it with sponges and deerfoot stipplers and basically get it all worked in, I instead took it, because it's nice and liquidy, and loaded it into an airbrush and shot it on. And that actually worked pretty well for the most part. Because it's so thin and because it seems to dry pretty quickly, it was really easy to come in there and then sort of take a blending brush and brush a bunch of it away and blend it in and get a nice beaten up sort of look going on. And it really shows up best when you look at it from the side. You can kind of see all along the wing here and all along like the flaps and stuff where it has that just sort of dusty, worn look to it. And it's something I'd love to play with more. I think maybe a bit more discipline in like adding some clear coats between them so that I can maintain separation, they don't all blur together, might really help. But pretty cool to see that work. Then the inner surface of the wings here, it's sort of a combination of those Mr. Weathering Colors and some various oils. Oils were also used to build up the exhaust staining, which, at least in my reference photos, is relatively faint compared to what you see in some of the World War II stuff. I'm not quite sure what the deal is there. There's definitely still buildup around the stubs themselves and the steel panel, and after that it sort of fades out as it flows back. We've also got some leaks coming out of here, streaked back, that's black, and engine grease oil. Just dabbed it into that hole that I had to drill, to me I didn't provide it, and streaked it back with a brush. Let's see, what else have we got going on? I added some streaks to the base of the propeller spinner, and oh man, it is a pain in the ass to streak oils on super shiny Moto T009. They just do not streak well at all. Like if you look on the bottom here, I think I got some fairly good streaks going on the underside of the cowl. Like I'm very happy with those and how they came out. Those didn't really happen with anywhere near the same ease up here. This stuff is super slippery, and the oil either tends to smear all over the place or just wipe off. Even if you let it dry for a little bit before you come and attack it, then it just gives you like a half millimeter of streak and then wipes off. So definitely a huge pain in the ass there. That is not something I would care to repeat anytime soon. Let's see, let's go around to the underside, because I didn't pay too much attention to the underside because honestly I fucked up the insignia, so kind of lost interest. But a little bit of stuff with the ejection ports, a little bit of underside staining with the guns, and mostly focused right there on the leading edge. And if you look at any photos that you can find of the underside of Mustangs in flight, a lot of leaks along the lower cowl area that kind of filter back through the gear door channel right there, and a few on the gear doors themselves. And they flow back and essentially go around the radiator housing and out the side. And so that's what I've done here as well. They also kind of build up on the radiator housing, collect back here, and get shot over the little exhaust door. So more fluids, fun. The rocket stubs, I actually ended up using the Tamiya stubs, and I just clipped the rockets off because fuck that. I think it looks pretty cool without the rockets on it, to be honest, and you don't see that many photos of the rockets all loaded up. The wheels and the props are both actually the spinner's aftermarket too. These wheels are, is it Hussar, or it's like Hussar or Cossack or some sort of Russian-y type of thing. But they are fantastic wheels. They've got the circumferential tread that was pretty common, not ubiquitous, but pretty common during Korea. And I have built up a lot of little dirt tones on these. I think these actually came out better than the wheels on the Edward kit. And honestly, because they're one piece, I'd consider using them in the future on another Edward kit. I would just have to drill out the hubs a little bit more to match that big fat axle that the Edward kits have. The props are quick boost, and I know they're not all that weathered, but the photos show them pretty damn clean, so I kind of had to stick with what I had. But it's a nice contrast to the rest of the kit. So that's a quick tour around the kit, except, last thing, the canopy. I decided to just go ahead and be lazy and use the Tamiya canopy. Not my favorite. I hate gluing the clear part onto the plastic part, but it's a guaranteed fit. It's pretty simple, made masking easier. And again, advanced mule, so I can deal with it. Alright, so let's get to sort of my motivations for this kit and how it went. So my initial motivations were to basically see how this stacks up against the Edward Mustang. The Tamiya Mustang is well regarded as one of the better kits out there, even though the clear parts thing is a bit of a travesty. The rest of the kit is pretty nice. And I have fond memories of building this, both the B and the D, shortly after I returned to the hobby. So I figured, okay, let's give it a 1-to-1 comparison against the Edward kit. I'd originally started with the Edward, the Airfix, and the Mang. The Airfix and the Mang both fell by the wayside. But I hadn't done the Tamiya, so what the hell, let's give it a shot. And I also wanted to satisfy my curiosity to see if I could graft the Mang windscreen assembly onto the Tamiya kit, which, sure enough, it goes. It does help to have the Ares cockpit in there, which provides a lot of extra detail and things like that. And it provides a nice instrument panel combing that is not just part of the fuselage. So that was basically my initial curiosity, was like, how does it stack up against the Edward kit? And can I make the windscreen fit? The other motivating factor to do an F versus some other option is the markings. I dig the very different look of the Korean era Mustangs, and I wanted to give it a shot and see how it went, not only with the big shark mouth and the nose art, but also with the stripes on the insignias, the chipped markings, all that kind of stuff. And so this is basically a test bed for when I tackle the big Tamiya 132nd kit one day. And kind of working out some ideas and some techniques. I played around with, how can I beat up the LP11 to make it more interesting. And I think I got about halfway to what I wanted to get to. The weathering, I think I got about, maybe again, halfway to what I wanted to get to. But it was definitely enough to give me some good ideas on approaching the bigger kit in the future. Now, how does it stack up to the Edward kit? Honestly, it doesn't. The Edward kit is definitely the better kit, and it shows up in a lot of little ways. So, one of them is the windscreen and canopy arrangement. You know, it's like, yeah, you can replace this with the main windscreen, but you have to buy the main kit, and at that point, you may as well just buy the Edward kit for the, for the price that we're talking. So that's a bit frustrating. The side detail on the fuselage, this just does not hold up to the fantastic surface detail that the Edward kit has. The only place that it beats it silly is the upper cowl right there. And that's because Tamiya gives it to you as a separate piece. And that allows them to put the proper detail in and not have that absurd detail fade that the Edward kit has. So props to them for that. The underside, the gear bays are very simplistic. That also makes them a lot easier to work with, and that's nice, but they are very simplistic. And the underside, because it is basically all this joins together, you have to clean up, and that means you lose a lot of detail, and I just couldn't be asked to get it all back together again. So, if you want to build a 148th Mustang, yeah, this guy's still nice and simple, and it builds pretty fast, but the Edward kit just has the detail down, and it goes together also pretty well. It takes a bit more thought and a bit more effort, but the detail that you get out of it, I think, makes it worth it. Again, the only thing to really worry about is this upper cowl, and honestly, on most Mustangs, the upper cowl is painted in some sort of olive drab or black or something like that, and so you're not gonna be super punished for poor detail or rescribed detail there the way you might be on, say, the fuselage if it's bare metal. So yeah, overall, that is the kit. That is the build. That is the lessons learned. Glad I did this. Great experiment. Great sort of advanced mule to keep me sharp. Learned some lessons with playing with LP11 and the joys of trying to weather over something super ass shiny like that. Cool to see that the main windscreen again fits onto the Tamiya kit if you want to avoid the stupid glass on plastic join right there. Yeah, that is that. So I know this kit has so far been exclusive to Patreon, and I'm planning to continue things like that in the future, where I'll sneak in some builds here and there that just aren't shared publicly, at least during their work in progress phase. So if you want to see some of those, be sure to join up over at patreon.com/DugsModels. Also have some things like merchandise and whatnot coming soon if anybody's interested in that. And yeah, that is the Mustang. So thanks for following along with the F-51 build. It's been fun. It's not as good as the Tamiya kit, or it's not as good as the Edward kit, but it's still a great kit. So there we have it. Thanks for watching. Check you later and all that business.